Well, welcome, PACA 2. We're back ready to hit some targets here. It's late May and we're getting the conference meets are over, getting ready for nationals and or regionals, the stepping stone for nationals as we head into a summer of track and field that's going to be longer than usual because now the World Championships aren't until mid-September. So we've got a lot of time left in our season. And so our guest tonight is Coach Harry Marra, and he is mainly known as Mr. Decathlon and was the spearhead with the decathlon program back in what was that, the 90s, I guess,
Yeah.
with the
Vince-
development of the Dan and Dave program and just the visa program and everything, which he can share, but also for being the personal coach for Ashton Eaton, who again set world records, gold medals, and just was off the charts as far as performance. And so, Harry, we thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we look forward to hearing some of the stories, which we know you have many, many of. What I'd like to do is start with something that Harry shared with us, and that is an introduction, I believe, with from Ashton that will explain a little bit of Ashton's point of view on things and how he related to the event and to training. And let me just verify now, can you see the blank screen here? Or a black screen, I should say. Okay. All right. So this is Ashton introducing Harry at a banquet. And let me be sure I get everything on.
Thousand people, but I'm more nervous right now. um, I'm going to tell a story and I introduce my coach. February 25th, 2015. I am at home in Eugene, Oregon, at Hayward Field, and Harry and I are at the track training. And it's a hard training day. And at the end of this training day, I have hard intervals to work out. I've done 100 times before. So it's kind of approaching it like, all right, let's get this done, no big deal. And I had to run a few of these things. So I run the first one. It's hard to finish, I'm out of breath. Harry's like, hey, that's good. I go to the line, I get ready to start the second one. Harry blows the whistle. I take off, I'm running, I'm fighting. I'm about halfway through the interval, working hard. I'm like, yeah, this is when I'm getting tired. And then something happened to me that never happened to me before. This voice in my head said, you should quit. And this is, 2015, we're kind of getting ready for the Beijing World Championships. By this point, I'm a world record holder, gold medalist. And we're actually really looking at the Rio Games. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, what just happened? I think if you were at practice and watching me, you probably would have seen me stumble a little bit. So I was like, in such shock that my mind would say, like, you should quit. Because I never wanted to quit anything in my life, especially a sport, especially track and field, which I loved. So I kind of fought through and I finished the interval. And I remember telling Harry, I was like, hey, I think something's wrong with me. And instantly, his eyes stopped me. He goes, you hurt her. I said, no, coach. I feel weird. Something's not right. Something's different. He said, you want to stop? You only got one more left. You need to take a break. I was like, no, maybe it's just a fluke. I don't know. I didn't tell him I felt like I wanted to quit. I just said, something feels off, but maybe I'll be okay. So I went back to the line, started again. I'm running, feel good. It's that same exact spot. And when you're in an airplane on a clear day, look down, it's really easy to spot a track. And that's the image that I had in my mind. I was like in an airplane, looking down. I remember, kind of traveling around the world, looking at tracks and thinking, yeah, that's my spot. That's my world. I know what I'm doing there. Good at that thing. And this time, though, the voice in my head said, you just run around that thing in circles. Like, what are you doing? What good is that? What are you actually contributing? You should just stop. And I remember at Hayward Fields at the time, there was a gate right where I was in my run. And I was like, maybe I should just run out that gate and just be done. I think if I would have, I wouldn't have done Rio. But I fought through and I finished the interval. I said, Coach, I think something's really wrong. I'm not quite sure what it is. And on our way to the cool down track or to the recovery session, Harry was kind of trying to give me a talk about not putting too much pressure on myself and relaxing. Let's take a break. And I remember sitting in the recovery tub thinking, what is going on? This is kind of hard. This is difficult. And I had this weird philosophical thought like, why are things hard in the first place? Why is struggling a thing? Like, why is it in order to get stronger, I have to fight against these heavy weights and like lift up? Why is it in order to run faster, I have to run so hard, like throwing up in a drainage ditch? And then I started thinking, well, in life, like, why do you have to stumble and fall when you're a little kid in order to be able to learn to walk? Why are the strongest bonds and relationships built from struggles that we've had together? And something came to my mind that Harry used to tell me, and more lived, more that something that I saw in him every single day. And it was about the decathlon. And he said, you know why I like coaching decathletes, Ashton? Because they know how to fight. The decathlon in many languages is actually translated to 10 fights, 10 struggles. And as I was thinking of that, I thought, as an athlete, my goal is to find out what I'm capable of. A young woman said it this evening. She said, I was trying to push my limits. And the thought that came to me was, struggle causes growth, and vice versa. Growth is a struggle. If you want to grow, if you want to push your limits, you necessarily have to struggle. If you're going to struggle, you have to fight. And nobody has exemplified that better, taught me that better than Harry Marra. If I had to describe Harry in one word, I was forced to, it would be fiery. And the reason is because when I think of Harry, I think of sun. The sun shines all of its energy down on Earth. Without it, nothing would exist. The plants would go, the oceans would freeze, us and the animals all gone. Harry, for his whole life, has burnt red hot to sustain this sport in all of its facets. From developing toddlers to teenagers to mentoring and coaching other coaches, coaching athletes in poverty, all the way across the world, some of the best in the world. Harry has a certain gravity to him that makes you want to be around him, a certain warmth that makes you want to just be what he has to say. If you're lucky enough to be one of his athletes, like the sun, Harry never slept. He was always up, working, burning, trying to shed light on some aspect of your technique, of your plan, of your future, this sport. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce one of this sport's brightest stars, our coach, our friend, our mentor, Harry Marra.
Okay, so the struggle, you see what it all like. The struggle, if Ashton is feeling a struggle, then again, like you said, what are our kids going through? And Harry, you're dressed in yellow today so that you are like the sun. And take it over here. So share with us the words of. So Harry said you said you'd like to kind of share some intro, and then we could go to question answer based on that. But
Right.
why don't you share with what all's going on in your life right now?
All right. And the reason everybody can hear me okay, I guess, huh? The
Yes.
reason why I wanted Sue to show that is there at the time, Ashton was the world's greatest athlete, February 25th, 2015. And he was having doubts about certain things in his continuing on to Rio because the pressure was so much, et cetera, et cetera. And I think every coach should see that. And then every one of your athletes obviously has doubts at certain moments. And they're coming up through the ranks. And if you can say, hey, doubts are normal, that's normal to have. If the world's greatest athlete is having doubts, well, then you have them. Don't worry about it. Just find a way to get through them, type thing. So that's the main reason why I wanted Sue to show that. And let me just add this to the introduction to say to Sue, thanks for continuing the legacy of Brooks Johnson. I ran for Brooks at Sports International in 1970, 71 at Sports International Track Club down in Washington, D.C. Great experience. And I remember when Brooks started these calls years ago, he was looking to help coaches, obviously, but also to develop podium ready coaches and podium ready athletes. And that's a tough thing to do. That's a very, very tough thing to do. How many world class or great college NCAA athletes do you know off the top of your list or top of your head and that were good in college but never made it to the next level? When Brianne Tyson, for example, came out of Oregon, nobody thought she was going to go to the next level. The sponsors, et cetera, et cetera. But she had a desire to improve, and she didn't try to improve. She committed to improve, and it did happen. But so Brooks is, being a former head coach for me and a friend all those years. It was great. It's great that you're doing this. All
Thank you.
right. I was going to go through maybe for 10, 12 minutes a number of different vignettes that every coach needs to develop, have, and then develop to their fullest in order to be successful. And it can be related to combined events, and it can be related to coaching the high jump, the pole vault, the sprints, whatever it may be, type thing. And initially, in a gross concept, is the four letters P, K, T, and C. Passion, knowledge, trust, and communication. Each one of those domains, I could talk for hours on each one, but I won't, type thing. Each one of those needs to be continually developed as a coach going forward. You have to have a passion for what you're doing. In effect, in the decathlon, your life has to revolve around decathlon, heptathlon. And when I say decathlon in this talk tonight, I mean decathlon and heptathlon, rather than just say both, whatever. I'm saying combined events. So you need passion. Every coach needs to have a thorough, continually growing knowledge of what the event is asking them to do. What's the high jump asking you to do? The high jump's asking you to do nothing more than change linear momentum or straight line momentum, stop it on a dime, and convert it into a vertical component. That's all it's asking you to do. Now, the next step is how do you do that? And then what role does science play in that with how you develop your technique and so on? So understanding knowledge of your skills is critical. And that knowledge can't stop when you think you got it all. As soon as you think you know it all, something's going to come up and bite you. You got to keep going. Trust. You have to establish trust between yourself and the athlete. And you can go into that one in detail. But take this example. Your athlete misses the first two bars in the pole vault, first two bars in a high jump or something like that. You can't go in and reinvent the wheel at that point. He better, whatever you tell that athlete, he or she, they better have trust in you, and you better have trust in them that they'll carry it out. And that trust can't come. Let's say you were a great coach at this high school, and then you got a fantastic coach. You had so much success, it's crazy. And then you went to a college, a junior college, or a higher level, or whatever. Now the athlete should automatically trust you? Absolutely not. When I went to Oregon, no one trusted me, regardless of the success I had before. You have to earn that trust. And by having great passion, great knowledge, the trust will grow even more as you go on. Again, all of these things, jot them down, and you can ask questions. We'll go into the detail. And communication. If you know everything about passion, knowledge, and trust, but you can't communicate it to your athletes, then it's wasted. It's wasted information. It won't get across the line, and so on. So communication is critical. Communication isn't you talking to your athlete. It's both ways. The athlete talking back, talking to you, and you listening, and then developing it along that side. All right. All of these need to be worked on daily. And the last general thing before I get into specific vignettes is this. I take coaching so seriously from this standpoint of view. Some kid has come to me, come to you, whatever. Coach, make me the best 400-meter hurdler you can. To me, that was an enormous responsibility because the window for developing that kid is what, 6, 7, 8 years. You get the middle, late 20s, things start failing on you physically. All right. So I wanted to take as few steps going backwards during that development of that kid running the 400-meter hurdles or whatever it was. Then I didn't want to take that many steps going backwards. So I studied, I learned, and what have you, all those particular things that I talked about earlier. Okay, that's important. That's important. Theoretically, if we don't get dementia, if we don't get Alzheimer's, we can develop our brain cognitive aspects right up to our last breath, theoretically, but we can't do that with our body. So it's important to know this. All right, some vignettes, just short little things, and I'm reading them here because I had quite a few of them. Go in, especially in combined events, go into every competition 100% healthy and only 85% in shape. Don't push the envelope in practice so hard that, especially when you're fatigued, training as a heptathlete, decathlete, and an injury occurs. What's the main caveat why combined event athletes are good? Well, yeah, they're multiple. They can do a lot of events. They're competitive. They're very competitive. They love to compete at everything, no matter what it may be. All right. So if they go in 85 to 90% in shape, they can move that competitiveness up on Saturday or the meet day to 100% if they're 100% healthy. But so many people go in 100% in shape, but my hamstring is bothering me, my lower back is, whacked out or something like that. So do that. Safety. Design your training programs. And again, we can talk about each one of these. Safety. Design your training program on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a yearly basis, and what have you, so that there's less chance of getting injured than potentially creating an injury type thing. All right. The decathlon, heptathlon is an injury really looking for a place to happen. Safety in designing the program. I can outline for you as we go forward here today exactly how we did it. And it took me over many, many years. I coached hep and deck for maybe 40 plus years or something. I don't know. All right. The other thing, and this could be even in high school and then in later in college and obviously post-collegiate, running wise, we trained from approximately November, maybe late October, but November 1st to March 31st. We trained with all the skills, all the jumps, the throws, and what have you. We trained as a 400-meter runner. It was a serious Monday, Wednesday, Saturday 400-meter training program. We never trained for the 1500 or the 800. We did some technical work on it, but never trained for it. And Brianne went from 213 to 208. Ashton went from 425 to 414. We never trained for it. We trained for the 400 and then used that conditioning to teach how to run the 1500 correctly. So it's important to train as a 400-meter runner for those months. And people will say, what about speed work? Well, you're going to get speed work. Bring that question up when we're done here, and I'll tell you how to do that. All right. Sprint mechanics. If you're not an expert on sprint mechanics, get this book. It's dogma. Read it every single night. Tom Tellez's book, The Science of Speed, The Art of the Sprint. It's on Amazon, and I think he might charge a little bit more than I do. So instead of $1.37, he may make $1.67. I don't know. But anyway, it's a fantastic book. Tom Telez was one of my mentors, and if every coach, no matter what, if you're a throws coach, a jumps coach, a distance coach, you have to understand sprint mechanics. Why? Sprint mechanics are the foundation for all human movement in athletic and sports and just human movement. Sue and I were talking earlier. Manchester United had me over January and February to work with their football. It's called over there, soccer team. And I spent a couple of months teaching those guys how to run correctly. They understood that was that important. And the beauty with the football, they got deep pockets. Track and field doesn't. So it was kind of nice. All right, tangent area. Don't have any of your youth. This might be with your own kids specialized. Have them do a gazillion sports. Every great athlete that I was involved with over the years did many sports coming up. Coaching really shouldn't be spelled COACHING. It should be spelled adaptation. You're going to design the best workout for Monday. You got the best workout for whatever you're doing on Monday. And you show up at practice and your athlete comes and their neck is twisted off to the side. You go, what's up? Coach, I slept really weird last night. My neck is all geeked up. You go, well, we're not high jumping today. Land on your neck and maybe really hurt it badly or something. Coaching is adaptation. How do you gain confidence of adaptation? By knowing what we said earlier, knowledge of your event. Here's an example real quick. Almost every Monday from November 1st to the end of March, the 400-meter running workout for that day, 10 times 100 meters with 1 minute recovery. Each week they got faster and faster and faster and so on as you were going month to month. All right, we're warming up one day at Oregon. We're in the weight room, it's raining, and we're doing some warm up. Ashton stubs his toe on a weight that's laying on the ground. So I said, well, I'll go out and try and run. And he's favoring it that. And he can't run. He's favoring it. Toe is really sore. Didn't hurt, didn't break it or anything, but just, you bang your toe real bad. So I said, well, we got to do something. So we go into the pool, chest deep water. He warmed up and so on. I said, how many strokes in 100 meters? It was a speed workout, right? He said 42 strokes, strides. I said, yeah, that's about right. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. 10 times 40 strokes running in place, chest deep water. I put a little 1 pound weight in his hands type thing. I didn't have to do that, but I did. And I said, instead of a minute rest, because running in the water is not as tough, I said, you get 30 seconds rest. And we did that. And after it was over, I said, what if he said, that felt just like 10 times 100 meters on the track. Later that spring, we go down to Berkeley for the Pac-10 championships. His PR in 100 meters was 10:35. He runs 10:18. I go crazy. I said, where in the hell, Ashton, did 10:18 come from? He said, Coach, all that water running. I learned the rhythm of how to run correctly. There you go. Adapt. Okay. Sam Adams was one of my mentors, and he was a coach for me post-collegiately at UC Santa Barbara, right here in Santa Barbara. And I was an assistant coach there for the women's team in the 70s. When we had faculty meetings at the beginning of the year, and this is important, people. This is really important. Everybody, all the coaches had to stand up and introduce themselves. Sam never stood up and said, I'm Sam Adams. I'm the coach of men's and women's track and field. He said, my name is Sam Adams. I'm the coach of applied physics and applied exercise physiology. Amen. That is the deal. Now, don't get scared and say, I got to go get a degree. I got to get a PhD. I don't have that. I got a degree and a master's in physical education and so on. But I'm not that smart of a guy. All right. All you have to do is understand human movement and read on it and so on, and then apply it. And I can talk about that a little later and so on. Another thing, you're in practice. Your athlete's struggling with the shot put. You're just not getting it done. You're asking them to land on that right foot, let's say the right-handed thrower, land on the right foot and attack the board with the left side. Well, that means your sagittal planes are working independently. That's tough to do. All right, and there's a struggle point. And he or she asks you a question, and you don't have the answer, don't make it up. I've seen a lot of people make it up. And I can give you exact examples of that going forward. Tell them you'll get back to them, and then go home and do your homework and think it through and write it down and then get back to them. I did that often. And sometimes in the middle of the night up in Oregon, I'd wake up with the answer and I'd type off an email at 3 o'clock in the morning. And Ash and Bree say, that guy never sleeps. He's always up, thinking about this thing. Well, I was asleep, but it just came to me in a dream or whatever. All right. LBW, learn by watching. This is great. This conference call right here is a Zoom call, and it's great. You will pick up ideas, hopefully. But really, the best way to learn is LBW, learn by watching. When I got the head job at San Francisco State, I was a coach at Springfield College back in Massachusetts. We were successful, but, it's not as high-powered as California. I said, I'm going to have to learn more. I got on an airplane every fall for 10 days, flew to Houston, and hung out with Tom Tellez. He was my mentor. And I followed him around from 8 in the morning till 6 at night. Tom had a reputation, jumps and sprints, right? He coached every single event. I took notes all day. We went to dinner at night. Tom, Carl was doing this in the 100 or in the block starts, and you made this adjustment. What was the deal? Why did you do that? What's the logic behind that? That's how you learn. So when I go to a clinic now, wherever to do a clinic, I teach somebody the long jump, all the coaches standing around for 45 minutes or whatever they're watching. And then after you're done coaching the athlete, you sit down with the coaches and they ask the questions. Learn by watching is a great way to go. All right. And teaching technique. When you're teaching technique to the kids, do not treat the symptom. Every coach, 99.9% of the coaches can see when there's the athlete has done something wrong. What's most important is not fixing that, fixing the cause of the problem. Why did they do that? Dial the event backwards and see where it broke down. And that's a critical part of the teaching process. It's the most important part. An athlete, when he or she misses a bar or doesn't get a great long jump or whatever and comes over to you, they don't want to hear in the middle of a competition. They don't want to hear what they did wrong. They know they did something wrong. They want to hear from you, coach, what do I need to do in the next jump to make it better, to make it right? Treat the cause of the problem, not the symptom. All right. The work to rest ratio in multi-events. You can talk about what are those things called? Periodization tables and all that kind of stuff. I don't follow them at all. You can't do that in multi-events because you're always tired and so on. We did this when I first started with the athletes when they were just out of college, 3 weeks of work, 1 week of recovery. Later on, as they got 23, 24, you could probably do three weeks of work, 1 week of recovery in high school because they're younger and they got more energy. We went to 2 weeks of work and 1 week of recovery. What did we do in recovery? The exact same thing we did during the work week, but we did not run. In other words, we did not do that hard 400-meter training. And that was enough to make them recovery. Then we started back in the cycle again. All right, here's going to knock your socks off. We stopped training in combined events. We started late October, but really November 1st. So November 1st through the end of March, we trained hard. I mean, 2 weeks on, 1 week off. And that's tough. And you're lifting weights and you're doing all the other stuff and whatever. All right. We stopped training every year, March 31st. And the last spot I was at, Oregon, we left Oregon, we came to Santa Barbara. The weather's good. We stopped training then, and all we did is we worked on all the skills, and we worked on all the jumps and the throws and whatever, kept our strength training going, started to peak it a little bit more to our explosiveness, and then we sharpened everything. Here's the philosophy behind it. You do not lose. If you stop training, and this is what I had to drive this point across to the Manchester United, they were working the kids too hard, way too hard. If you stop training in March, all right, and maybe in high school, it'll be April because you want to peak in June at the high school state meet or whatever it may be. All right, if you stop training, then you're not going to lose a thing. You're going to gain things by sharpening up, let the body heal up a little bit and be sharper. We stopped March 31st and we sharpened. We were at a peak in June to make the team, and then in August at the games or the Worlds to get to the podium and so on. So don't overdo it. train hard for that period of time. Any one athlete is only going to improve so much in any one given year. You're only going to grow so much. The kids that are fooling around with steroids and all that nonsense, they're going to go a little bit farther, but we don't do that stuff. And no one should do that stuff. And you don't just, if I go off on a tangent, you don't have to do that stuff in order to be the Olympic champion. You do not need that stuff. It's dangerous. Okay. Check your ego at the door when you're a patient of yourself. You're there for the athlete. Too many coaches, and you've seen it, go into it trying to have their athletes do what they didn't do as an athlete, and that's not a healthy statement. All right, the decathlon is an injury. The heptathlon, decathlon, looking for a place to happen. How do we do that? How do we keep those kids in the last spot I was at with Action Bree? 7 years, no major injuries. 7 years, no major injuries in the That's unheard of. How did we do that? We cheated. I knew I'd get your attention as soon as I said cheated, right? We didn't cheat. But I use the word cheating doing this. We did visualization. Where does visualization come in? It comes in from the same statement I made a minute ago. Treat the cause of the problem. Visualization is part of what develops in the central nervous system. Brooks Johnson, my coach, later on, after I was done being coached by him, we were at a meet somewhere, and he chewed me out up one side and down the other, as you well know Brooks can do, right? And I went to him, and our decathletes that year did pretty well, and Brooks was in the bar the next morning having lunch or whatever. Brooks, our guys ran pretty good hundreds, huh? He goes, the problem with you, Harry, is you don't know anything about the central nervous system. And that's Brooks, right? That's Brooks. And it made me stop and think. And what he was saying is that they did run fast, but their reaction to the gun was horrible. They didn't know how to come out of the blocks and so on and so forth. So we worked on that stuff. Anyway, visualization. If you visualize, you are activating the central nervous system. So much so that it's a pre-warm-up before you go out to do the skill itself. Here's an example. You do the 100 meters or let's say the women, the 100-meter hurdles, right? When Brianne or any of the heptathletes wake up on day one, they're not heptathletes. They are 100-meter hurdle women. And that's all they're focused on. Okay. And rather than have this big conglomerate of ideas, they're just zeroed in on the hurdles. Then they go underneath and they change their shoes. Now they're putting on their high jump shoes. We cheated again. Inside their high jump shoe was this little sheet of paper that Brianne wrote up the night before, and she put down her 3 cues that she wanted to use in this particular event, in this particular meet, in this particular event in the high jump. And those cues might be tall out of the back, maintain posture through the hop, and then keep crossing last street, whatever those cues are. So much so that we had all the cues written down on a sheet of paper like this. And we didn't use all of these, but these were all the cues. I made this list up for the kids, and they could use those as we both agreed upon which cues to use and so on. By having those cues in the shoes as she's putting on, she's already pre-warming up. So now she goes out there to do, her approaches after she measures out her high jump. She's getting ready to go. And you know what? With an injury looking for a place to happen, I never saw anybody get hurt visualizing anything, right? Maybe you get tired. Maybe your mind goes bad. A month before a big heptathlon, they would visualize 2 or 3 events a night. The last week, they visualized just the first day, and then the last couple nights, just the first event. And they're zeroed in on that. All right. The charge. Don't ever put a limit on anyone athlete. Hey, I think you can jump 23 feet today, or I think you can jump 6 feet 2 today in the high jump or something. Don't put a limit on them. Instead, go into the meet. The hardest part of track and field, I think, is not the competition. They're intense or whatever, but the training. You have to work hard in training and get all these little glitches ironed out. So the cue we used for whether it was a little dual meet or the Mount Sac relays or the Olympic Games was the same for everyone. Let's do in the meet exactly what we've been doing in practice, albeit let's do it with a little bit more gusto, vigor, or what have you. And the end result will take care of itself. The performance will take care of itself. All right. Central nervous system cues in the shoes. I talked about that. Oh, after an event is over in the multi events, let's say they're in the gals are doing the javelin, and then they're going to go into the 800 meters. And on the last throw in the javelin, it was real good, or it wasn't as good as you had hoped, and so on. Do not even discuss it with the athlete. You can discuss it later on after the meet's over and so on. A meet because there's no point in discussing, especially if it was a bad performance. You can't improve if you're going to read yesterday's newspaper clippings. Let's say you winged a javelin out of the park, all right, and you're all excited about it. And you're going into the 800, and you're not focused on the 800. And all of a sudden, you stink it up, and so on. Just leave it alone. Talk about it later. And finally, just as a one cue at the very end, and then I want to take questions. Ashton broke 5 world records, I think, when I was with him. 3 in the heptathlon indoors, and twice he broke the decathlon world record, once in Eugene and once in Beijing. Never once, never, ever, ever once did we go into the meet, in front of the meet, and say, hey, Ash, you know what? You're really in good shape. Let's try to break the world record this meet. We never said that. Yeah, when it came up to the 1,500 meters, the last event or something, I'd look and say, hey, you got a lot of points right here. If you run this, you can break the world record. We might have talked about it then, but never before. Just do what you're doing in practice and go forward from there. All right, that gives a lot of food to ask questions from. Fire them away. I'll see if I can answer them.
You said you didn't run in recovery times. What did you do?
We went to the swimming pool periodically. So here was our running. Monday, 10 times 100. Wednesday was our toughest workout. Hard intervals, but instead of if in combined events, if you're going to get a 400-meter runner, if you're going to give them the volume of a 400-meter runner, they're not going to have any legs Thursday or Friday to high jump or throw the shot. So I cheated again. I cut down the volume to no more than 1,000 meters on Wednesday, but instead of a 6 to 8 minute rest, I gave them 3.5 minute rests. It was a killer workout. So they may run a 300, 250, 250, 200, and 150 or something, whatever added up to 1,000 meters or 1,100 meters, something along that, with a 3.5 minute recovery. All right. And then on Saturday, every Saturday, we ran hills at Hendricks Park in Oregon. And we ran them as hard as we could. Now, here's the deal. What we did. Monday was 10 times 100 with 1 minute recovery. All right. So that was like a semi speed endurance type workout. Wednesday was really a tough speed endurance type workout with 3.5 minutes recovery running over 1,000 meters type thing. So on Saturday, the human body can only take so much. They ran 1,000 meters up the hill, maybe 100, 125, 150, 125, 100 over and over again, whatever it may be. All right. But I said, run them hard, run them technically sound, take as much time as you want in between. If you want 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes between, I don't care. Just run these suckers real hard with good technique. But this is not speed endurance. This is just running hills, and speed up a hill and so on. So we did not do any of that running. Instead, we went to the swimming pool and maybe just did, Oregon had everything. They had swimming pool with a mirror. You could watch your strokes, your arm action, and so on. You don't need that stuff. You don't need all that. Just get in a swimming pool about chest deep, and just feel the rhythm. You can pick it up a little bit, but you're not working hard. You're not even getting your heart rate up that much, type thing. It's a tremendous thing. The swimming pool was so important to us that every trip we took overseas, the first question Paul Doyle, our agent, would ask, do you guys have a swimming pool at the place? And it was a great warm-up.
Excellent. Okay, questions, raise your hand, the virtual or motion, or just Unmute. Come on, you guys have never been shy. You mentioned earlier you were going to say something about speed. What do you remember that?
Someone, yeah, a couple of things. Someone asked me once a question. Hey, your kids are pretty quick. They run good 400 meters. They run good 100 meters and stuff like that. Uh, do you do speed? Do you come back and do a speed workout on the second day or third day after you did a workout before? And I go, I don't know. And they say, what do you mean you don't know? I said, I haven't got a clue. You have to coach to the athlete. Someone asked me the other night, do you coach a female different than you do a male? I said, you coach to the athlete. You find out what makes that person, what turns that person on. Maybe they like an aggressive approach. Maybe they like a passive approach. That's part of the psychology. Carl Lewis and I did a big clinic down in Costa Rica. I think it was 2018. And there was a sports psychologist that always spoke in the morning before we gave our presentations, and then went out in the track and did learn by watch.
Oh, you froze there. Let's see. Harry, you froze. Let's see, we lost the volume.
And that sports psychologist,
There we go.
geez, I do that. I do that. So anyway, the sports psychologist was saying these things, and I'm saying, I do that. I do that. So you have to really coach to the athlete. And when they're warming up and saying, you know what, you're looking at them and saying, hey, are you really tired? Because a lot of times athletes won't tell you. And tell them we're not doing it today. We'll push it to the next day. But have confidence that you can do that. Coaching is one huge adaptations.
Okay, great. Eric, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, Harry. It's Eric McCrae.
Hey,
We
Eric.
met here in Baltimore.
Right.
Good to see you. I wanted to pick your brain more about the 400. We've had great 400 runners in our programs, and then we've struggled to develop them. I know it's a mental toughness thing, and you really have to be willing to put the work in. When dealing with high school athletes, what should we be looking for, and how do we train them into that
You're
400?
breaking up a little bit, Eric. You're breaking up. I couldn't hear everything. You're struggling with the 400-meter athlete. Yeah, I heard.
Can you hear me any better now?
I can
No.
hear some. Yeah, I can hear that. Yeah, go ahead.
My question was just about how do you train the mindset for the 400? We know that it takes toughness, and identifying those 400 runners, and developing them as a high school athlete.
Do this, Eric. I know what you're saying, and yes, it is a tough race. I mean, you're hurting always after a 400 meters. So play different games with them, and you can maybe do this way. There's an art to running a technically correct 400 meters. There's an art to that. So switch it up a little bit. Maybe that person isn't running. Let's say they ran 52 seconds or whatever this weekend, and you know they're better, but they didn't run it technically sound. Then throw in a different technique where they were off and change it up from there. And so all of a sudden they're not thinking about the pain and what have you, and the fear and what have you, but they're learning about a movement. All of a sudden they improve like a little bit. One, you're developing trust with the athlete, and two, you're getting them to understand the 400, that much better. Ashton Eaton ran 45 flat at Beijing in the 400 meters in the decathlon. That was his first decathlon in 2 years because I gave him the year off, and he ran a blowout 150. We always do a blowout 150 18 minutes before the 400 meters into the decathlon, 19 minutes. And he ran his fastest 150 ever. And he came to me and said, hey, I am poop, coach. I haven't done a meet in 2 years. I'm poop. I said, Ashley, just trust this track. It's fast and run like you normally do. And I said, use the cues that you picked up from Quincy Watts. Quincy Watts gave him a couple cues. I said, use those cues. He went out and ran 45 flat. Couldn't believe it. He thought he ran into somebody else's lane. He cut in too soon or something, but it was okay. So play different games with that. That means it mandates, Eric, that you really have an understanding of the 400 meters and what the demands are and so on. Does that help?
It does, Harry. Thank you so much.
Ashley.
Yeah, hey Harry, how you doing?
Ashley Moore, how are you? How's the SMU stuff?
Good, good. Hey, I had a question. You talked a lot about how your Mondays you'd try to split the workout and do like shot put hurdles and then high jump and speed endurance, something
Right.
like that. How would you adapt that if you have kids who can only do one session per day? Sometimes I feel like I'm doing too much in one practice session, or I'm moving it to other days, and every day it becomes hard then. Any advice in that scenario where you can only do a session per day?
Yes, cheat. I use the word cheat again, meaning this: use what I call shadows. So, for example, here's what we did late in the week, but you could do this on a Monday. Let's say Monday you are going to follow that routine, good warm up and all that stuff. And then you're going to go to the shot put, and then you're going to run some hurdles. And you want to get some high jump into, and then obviously it's important to run the intervals at the end. Well, if they're tired or you think you're overdoing it, cheat one of those events. Just work the shot put, for example, or maybe the hurdles, blocks coming out of the blocks over the first hurdle or something like that, instead of going 4, 5, or 6 hurdles or whatever. Or you do shot and hurdles, and then in a high jump, simply hold a medicine ball in your hand and walk through and then run through the approach and make sure they're getting it timed up. Don't actually do the full jump and whatever. So that's how we cheated. The word cheating came up to me with Brian Brophy when I had him. We were training in Northern California. And the first month, we just go through the motions, just do workouts and, easy. And the first month of training always should be finish as if you didn't do anything at all. Don't push the envelope. I did that with all of them. So after 3 weeks, it looked like Brophy was in pretty good shape, general shape to start training. I said, hey, Brophy, just for giggles, let's go run at 800 meters today, just for fun. It was the end of the week. His PR was 205, 206, something like that. Kid goes out and runs 203. He didn't even start training yet this year, just general fitness. And all of a sudden, he said, where the hell did that come from, Harry? I said, it's from everything you did all the years before, and you just got your body generally in shape. So adapt one of those, and that's your call. Maybe she shouldn't high jump today because groin's tight or sore, or that would be overdoing it or whatever. So that's the adaptation part of multi of our combined events, Ashley. And you're going to have to convince her that that's going to help. All right. Do it in front of mirrors. Watch yourself in front of mirrors. If you do your stuff, all of our pre-running workouts were done in front of mirrors. They held a little weight in their hand, maybe a javelin ball or something like that. And they did the correct arm action, not quicker, but faster through that range of motion. So they timed it up. And if you time up the arms control the range of motion and the tempo of the stride. You don't sprint with your lower body, you sprint with your arms. If your arms are correct in movement through that range of motion, and you put your foot down correctly underneath you on the ball of the foot, you're going to get a stretch reflex and go right through. It's a piece of cake, but it's controlled by the arms. The arms have to be correct.
Got it. Thanks, Harry.
You got it. And Ashley's athlete cut down. We talked a couple weeks ago, cut down. And what did she PR by 200 points?
Yeah. We just did probably 3 or 4 workouts in the past 7 to 10 days. Just focus on rest, shadows, mirror stuff, walkthroughs, and yeah, like you said, show up 100% healthy because she likes to compete. So if we get her to show up 100% healthy with lots of energy, that we did that and it worked out, even though she wasn't doing a ton of workouts at the end.
Exactly. Time it activate the central nervous system in 2012. We took off from there after the trials and hung out in Germany because it was only an hour and a half flight into London for the games. And one of the meets, Trey Hardy came with us, Ashton Bree, Mario Satania was coaching Trey. And maybe a week before we left, we were going to do a meet over there. And the van was full. So Mario and I had to ride our bicycles from the hotel we were staying at to the meet. And Mario said, "Hey, Harry, what's Ashton doing in warm up today?" I said, "He's going to do some block starts. He's going to throw a couple shots, and then he's going to take some high jump approaches and some pops." And Mario says, "What the hell is he doing that for? He's going to do that tomorrow." I said, "That's exactly why he's doing it. He's going to activate the central nervous system." How often have you had an athlete say, "Coach, I am so poppy, so explosive. I feel great today, but I can't time this sucker up. I'm all over the place." You have to activate the central nervous system. We always did that. In Ashton's case, he always did it 2 days before. He liked to warm up on Thursday, and then Saturday was the meet. Bree liked to warm up on Friday. Either way works, but you go through the entire aspect of what you're going to do to activate the central nervous system. That's coming back to Brooks Johnson chewing me out one day.
Now, when you activate it, what, like obviously you're not going all out, but just going through the motion?
Just go through the motions, Sue. Yep. Danny Marconi was a high jumper at Oregon. He was 6'8" when I got there. He was a springy, skinny, wiry guy. He had good springs. And I'm there a year with him, 9 months actually, not even a year. And he goes from 6'8" to 7'2" and a quarter. How the hell did he do that? Did he get stronger? Did he get faster? Did he get more springy? He didn't. I taught him with a medicine ball in his hand. His approach was horrible. And by having the medicine ball in your hand, we do it with sprinters too, holding it out. And I had him walk the approach and then jog the approach and then finally run the approach. He timed it up by early spring, I think, UCLA meet, the Oregon UCLA. He jumped 7'2" and a quarter, 7'2" and a half, or something like that. So, yeah, he was just activating the central nervous system. Brian Brophy first showed me on visualization. Here's a good story for all you guys. We're at Sacramento in 95 in the spring, and he's doing a meet. And his best high jump is 6'8". He goes 6'10" and a quarter. What is that? 210? No, 208. 208 or 205?
No, it's probably 208, 210.
208, 210. So he goes 210, something like that. Yeah, he goes 210, 6'10" and a quarter. And I walk up to him after and say, "Brophy, that's fantastic. Congratulations." He goes, "You know what? I think I hurt my foot on takeoff." Well, he couldn't finish the meet. He strained badly the spring ligament in his takeoff foot. So our team doctor said, "No more jumping for 6 weeks." I said, 6 weeks? I said, "National championships, the qualifying for the Gothenburg 95 World Championship, 6 weeks." I said, "That's crazy." So we go to the trials, and 6 weeks later, his 100 long jump shot put, he's on fire. And then it starts to rain, turn cold, and we haven't done a high jump in 6 weeks. He jumps 209, a quarter inch less than he ever did. Never had a miss. And I stopped him right there. I said, "I don't want to push the foot." And I walked him out there. I said, "Brophy, where in the hell did 209 come from? You hadn't touched this event." He goes, "Every night I went home, laid in bed, and I closed my eyes and pictured the perfect high jump approach to take off." And I
Yeah, the visualization
works.
Yeah. Harry, you're freezing at times. I don't know if you're seeing that. Like right now, I think you're frozen, or now you're moving. So
Yeah,
just kind of
I'm
a
here.
heads up. The visualization, I think, is something that we don't utilize enough across the board. You know, that you can trick the brain. You talk about cheating, but tricking the brain
Right.
into thinking that it's actually happening or that you're actually doing it. So that is something. In the chat, the question is, what's one of the biggest things you stress to your athletes that other decathlon coaches don't do?
I don't know what other coaches don't do.
Sure.
What's the biggest thing
I guess the biggest thing that you stress to your athletes? I don't know. Coach, you want to unmute and ask your question?
I'm looking for that secret weapon, Harry.
Ed Marchand.
And it's
Hey,
not a boombox.
what that's I could tell you a story about Ed Marchand's boombox when we were at San Francisco State. But here's one of the most important things, whether it is with decathlon, heptathlon, or just open coaching in all the events in track and field. There needs to be developed a trust between you and the athlete along the lines, because no matter how you script a decathlon or heptathlon, it is never going to follow that suit. It's never going to follow that. So you're going to have adaptations. Let me tangent off just for a second. I was fortunate to have tremendous mentors coming up. Sam Adams, Tom Tellez, Brooks Johnson, Peyton Jordan, Ken Shannon, Frank Zarnowski, Jim Deegan, luminary coaches. Not once did those coaches ever answer the question I asked of them. Instead, they told me what I needed to do to figure the answer out. Why? Because when you're sitting in the Olympic Stadium and your athlete screws up the first two high jumps, and you got to make a decision as to what he does, you can't look around and say, Sam, what should I do? Tom Tellez, what should I do? They're not there. It's up to you, baby. So you got to figure it out. So developing that trust is a key element. So I don't know what other coaches do or don't do, and I don't can even concern myself, because that's just one more wicket you got to figure out, and there's too many wickets in the decathlon anyway. So I think developing the trust between the two of you, and that means pushing and shoving back and forth in practice. Ashton, I don't know how many times said to me, Coach, I think what you're telling me is not correct. I can't do it. And so we would have to go back and forth, pushing. Practices were the toughest. And then hopefully it would all iron out before we got to the competition, and away we went. And it did. It did. So I think that's a critical thing.
Thanks a lot, Harry.
You got it, Ed. If
This,
we had more time, I'd tell them the story of their boombox. Hey, I'm glad you're on.
Do I have a question?
David?
Harry, how soon do you think is too soon to start getting specific with multi-training?
I think freshman year in high school is okay. You can
Or
start.
I would say, sorry, in the training plan, like, so if you start in August,
Oh, I
right?
see.
Do you think that in September we're starting to work acceleration work? Can you work, being complementary training that soon, or how would you go about doing it?
Here's what we did. Here's what I did over all the years, Coach. We took the first 2 or 3 weeks and I evaluated. Just got in general physical fitness shape. 3 days a week. The first week we would run. 2 days a week we would lift weights. Then the next week, 3 days a week we would lift weights, and 2 days a week we would run. And we did that for a couple 3 weeks. Then I saw, hey, all of a sudden they're in pretty good shape. All right. So then we would start in. And then we would start in not with double workouts, just with single workouts. And I would call the workout. I would set up my schedule. I could go through the whole schedule and so on as to how we did it. But I would set up the schedule and maybe do selected events than that. And then as they got more and more in shape, specifically in training, then I would add the double days and that kind of thing. But don't overdo it. Don't try to teach a real technical skill at the end of a week when they're tired. If Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday really were structured days for us, Thursday and Friday especially, was catch as catch can. All right. So they would warm up. I would look at them and saying, hey, they look pretty good, or they look really flat and tired. I say, how do you feel? I'm really shot. Okay, let's shadow. We're supposed to high jump today. Let's shadow the high jump. Let's do some walkthroughs in the high jump or whatever. So you're going to have to constantly make a change and then buy into the central nervous system development and technique that way. Does that help you a little bit?
Yes.
The hit your question on?
Yes. And so I heard you talked about how you didn't really train the 1500 or the 800. And a couple months ago, we had Coach Garnham on, and he talked about how he didn't really train the high jump with Leo. Do you think that that's common, that there's maybe like a certain event that elite multi coaches don't really focus on?
I don't know. I'm not sure of that answer. What other coaches don't do. I say we didn't train it. In effect, we did train it by getting a tremendous 400-meter shape. Brianne ran maybe 53 something in college. She led off the 4x4 for Oregon. She ended up her third year after college. She ran 50.9 leadoff leg for Canada for their 4x4, and Ash ran 45 flat. So if you get in that kind of shape and then you change the technique of running the 1500, most decathletes, heptathletes don't run a good 4 and or a 15 and 8 because technically they're running it like a sprinter, and it's a big problem. You want to hear a quick story on this? So I introduced this technique, the shorting. We called it a shuffle, the technique of how to run the 15 and 8. They did the workout. Both of them came to me at the end and said, Coach, we don't like that stuff. That's voodoo. It's not going to work. I said, okay, whatever. So we take off to go to Estonia that winter, and Ash is having a good meet, and he's got to now run 234 in the 1,000. And nobody in the meet is going to be able to run with him. He's going to. I said, listen, you're going to have to do this all by yourself. So you might as well listen to me and make sure you get your legs underneath you and just shuffle this. So 1,000 meters, 5 laps, right? And we had splits set up. He comes through the first lap running correctly, technically, and hits the split. Second lap hits the split. Before I could even give him the split in the third lap, he looked over at me and says, I can go forever. And he was just in it. He ran 232 by himself, and he even lapped somebody. We fly back to Oregon. Bree was still in college. We got back at midnight. He hadn't seen her and missed her. The first thing he did, he get in the car. He goes, Bree, stop fighting coach. Listen to coach and do what he said. This shit works. There it was. There it was. So we treated the technique of that. And if you watch any of the great 1500 meter runners, you can go back all the way to Caitlyn Jenner in 1976 of how she ran the 1500. You can go back all the way to Bob Beamon in 1968 of how he approached the long jump and created a stretch, on the penultimate going into the takeoff step. They did good stuff. They did good stuff.
What is the shuffle? Because I know you did the shuffle and the shot put.
The shuffle was keeping your feet underneath you. Don't let the hands, they can go a little bit, but in effect, don't let the hands pass the hip as you're sprinting. You're not short in the front, long at the side, up in the back like a sprinter. You're just shuffling right along, and you get into a rhythm. Brian Brophy was an 11,400-meter guy. He was slow, but he ran 48 seconds in the 400 meters because he got in good shape. And when he got tired, before I called it the shuffle, I say to Brophy, he ran 428 in 1500, pretty good. And we trained the same way. We didn't do it. I said, bro, just when you're running and you get tired, don't pick your feet up. Just turn them over. Don't push off. Don't push off at all. Just keep turning over. And we used to nickname him Fred Flintstone because he took such little strides. He looked like Fred Flintstone running and so on. But he ran 428. So the shuffle was that. Just get into a rhythm. Everybody goes out the 8 and the 15, really too quick, but you go out that first 50, 60 meters and then settle into your shuffle. And as long as they do that, then with 300 meters to go, then maybe you really go to your arms like a sprinter and bring it home and what have you.
Great. Okay, Brendan.
Hi, thanks, Coach, and thanks, Sue. Coach, I actually coached the daughter of one of your former, I think, pole vaulters from, I think you were when you were in San Francisco, Sean Stone, years ago.
Sean Stone?
Yeah, Sean Stone. I coached his daughter.
He was a decathlete, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
New Jersey kid.
She came in the first day, and was like, "Oh, my dad was coached by this guy, Harry Marra," and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I think I've heard of him." Anyways, thanks so much. So I coach a relatively small high school. We have a very small staff. And we do have a very good athlete who's very much interested in combined events, wants to be a decathlete. He's a junior, very strong, mostly a quarter miler. But we don't have necessarily the most technically sound staff. I'm a distance coach who moonlights as a sprints coach as well. We have a decent jumps coach, but um, I guess my question is, throughout a year with one kid and a very small staff, should we look at things? How can we time things better for him to get 10 events in? Should we look at things? I tend to look at things in a week long cycle because of the distance portion of things. Would it be better to look at like a 2 or a 3 week? I'm just not sure how to divide things up in order to create a program to help him out.
What year in school is he?
He's a junior. He's finishing his junior year.
Okay. Well, here's I hope this helps you with an answer. Outline a safe protocol as to how you go for 1 week, and then split it up over the course of 2 weeks or something like that. You don't want to overwork the kids,
Right.
but you don't want to underwork also. Put a big emphasis on getting the running workouts in each day for everybody, not only for you, coach, but for everybody. Do you know if your hamstrings are extremely tight today or your quads have not recovered from the workout 2 days ago, you can still do a sprint workout. If you run technically sound, not improperly, technically sound, I mean, really sound. The only contraindication when your hamstrings are tight or your quads are sore because you haven't recovered, the only contraindication is you'll run slower that day, but you'll still get the work in. When I'm tired in the weight room, my best bench press is 200, and all I can do that day, I'm pushing as hard as I can. I get 180. I'm still getting a work in. My muscles are firing. They're just fatigued from whatever. So get the running workout in, and then outline what you wanted, outline your week, and then fit those events in where you can. Let me give you an outline of what we did, and I know Ashley has this. Warm-ups were great each day. Okay, Monday we went shot put. Why did we do shot put on Monday? Because the legs were fresh. We took Sunday off, sometimes Saturday, Sunday. Shot put, hurdles, high jump, 400-meter training. Tuesday, discus, javelin, upper body weight training. Wednesday, long jump. For Ashton, pole vault in the afternoon, 400-meter training. Okay. Thursday, same as Tuesday. Discus, javelin, lower body weight training. Don't do lower body weight training early in the week because you have all these other skills. Don't fatigue the legs Monday or Tuesday. Then you're shot all week or you're going to get hurt or something. Monday or Tuesday. Or Thursday, lower body weight training. Friday was catch as catch can. Watch the warm up. Hey, you're really shot. Let's just do some walkthroughs. Let's do some stuff in front of the mirror. Let's do some pole vault plants off to the side, not jumping and what have you. That type of thing. Saturday, where do you hear this one? Saturday, we're tired, right? From a full week. And the second week, you're really tired. You know what we did Saturday morning after warming up? Block starts. And people would look at me and say, why are you having to do block starts, Harry? In November to 7, they're exhausted. On Saturday, I said, I don't really care how fast they are. I didn't time them or anything. I said, I just wanted their technique correct. What did those block starts do? Maybe we did 6, 8, 10, I don't know, over 20 meters, something like that. They warmed us up for the hills that we ran later that day. So it was perfect. We got them in. Were they explosive, dynamic, whatever? No, but they were technically sound. The front block was at 90 degrees. The foot was at 90. They were coming out at 45 degrees. Their arm actions were correct, and stuff like that. So, and then cheat it, skip a couple events, or do a shadow type thing so you activate the central nervous system. It's one big puzzle. It's one huge puzzle. But if you have the knowledge of the event and you're confident that you have the knowledge of that, then you can go forward. I talk a lot, but let me give you this story. I'm at Springfield College. I was at UC Santa Barbara, started the women's program, and then I became the head coach of Springfield College. Had a good high jumper the first year. Second year, she goes into the tank, and I'm doing everything trying to figure it out. And we're working for a couple, 3 weeks. Nothing's going well. And I just
You're okay.
yeah, okay. So anyway, nothing's going well. And so I sat down and figured it out. And then I went to practice the next day and brought in to that practice. Her name was Kathy. I said, Kathy, here's what we're going to do. And worked it. And all of a sudden, she came out of the funk, and it worked. Back in the 70s, and called Tom Telez and said, Tom, here was the problem. Here's what she was doing. Here's what I did to fix it. It seemed to work out. What do you think? He goes, Harry, that's exactly what you should have done. As soon as he told me that as a young coach, stuff out. I don't have all the answers, but I'll figure it out. And I'll figure it out based upon simple science and stuff like that.
Now, Harry, you cut out when you were telling us what you did. So
I can't even remember what we did, but I think what she wasn't doing, she was not crossing over. She came from the right side, so her left foot was her takeoff, and she wasn't crossing over on her fourth step, and she was leaning in instead of leaning away from the bar. And then I made sure. Remember Debbie Brill?
Oh, yeah.
Debbie Brill and I trained together here at Santa Barbara, at UC Santa Barbara back in 71, 72, in front of Munich for her. And she used to take off parallel. She was really, if it wasn't for Fosbury, would have been called the Brill Bend instead of the Fosbury Flop.
Yep.
So Debbie and I were friends. And one day, I'm a young athlete, I don't know that much. And I said, Debbie, you know what? If you plant your foot at 45 degrees to the bar as opposed to parallel, you're not going to have centrifugal force take you into the bar. You're going to go up. Well, her coach, Lionel Pugh, was a good coach. He knew what was going on. He wasn't there that day. So I told Debbie, she just popped up. I think she went 6'3" or something like that, right?
Uh-huh.
6'3".
Oh, she went like 6'6".
Something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so if you gain confidence and you can apply simple science to everything, it's not a problem. It's not
Thanks,
a problem.
Coach.
Yep. Good luck.
Thank you.
And you know what? Less is more. If you're not sure what to do on a day, do less. Cheat it and go through with shadows. Less is more.
Thank you.
Harry, what kind of a weight training program did you have?
Upper body, lower body, fast weights, and then we designed a program. I actually designed it here at Westmont College one day in Santa Barbara to mimic all 10 events. It was a explosive dynamic deal. So we didn't go more than 2.5 days a week with weight training. Here's a good example. Brianne Tyson threw 48.11.5 in the shot at 136 pounds and 152 something in the javelin. And she never touched an upper body weight. She had an intercostal problem at birth, and they would inflame anytime she did. Even a woman with estrogen still gets a little bit bigger and stronger. She got tight in there. So when she threw the javelin or the shot put, she would hurt something in her intercostal and couldn't do it. So she lifted all lower body Monday, Wednesday, and sometimes Saturday or Friday, something like that, or we would give her Friday off. Basically, it was this. It was lighter weights, reps of 10 or 12, and here was the key. And let me throw this by, and I know the NCAA doesn't allow this stuff anymore. The NCAA is out to lunch, and they got to have these damn strength and conditioning guys that don't know shit from Shinola. About what they're doing with athletes. And but anyway, after every single exercise, 10 to 12, nonstop, they had to go from one exercise to another, to another, to another. After every exercise, they fired a med ball against the wall, 3K for the women, 4K for the men. They fired it mimicking a movement in one of their skills, but using the same muscle group they just exercised. So let's say you're doing incline dumbbell presses. then they would take the med ball and do a chest pass against the wall 10 times explosively. And we did that. And we did it nonstop because we wanted to get a training effect. We never lifted heavy weights. We never tested heavy weights. We never did that. To get explosive, we did multi throws. Some days I was sitting in the weight room and I watch them and they look, people were looking tired. And, after November turns into December, turns into January, you're pooped. I say, let's go outside and do multi throws. And all of a sudden, they're throwing multi throws farther than they did the first day when I tested them. And I said, you're explosive. You're just poop. We need some rest and so on. So I'm riding back from Monaco in 2016, early flight out of there after one of the galas. And I'm talking track with this guy next to me. Dark, I don't know. I can't even see in the middle of the night, early morning. And I said, you know a lot about track and field. And he goes, my name is Thomas Roller. I won the javelin in Rio. I said, you're Thomas Roller? And he goes, yeah, let me tell you something, Harry. I stole your weight training program with the dynamic med ball, and I used that, and it got me the gold medal. I said, damn, that is good. I got home. I called Ash and Brie. I said, Roller used our program. They were fired up. Here, a world-class javelin thrower uses what the multi-event person does and goes out and wins the gold. So it works. We did dynamics. And when you go again to that periodization, and peaking and stuff like that, I was the periodization guy. I would watch the athletes, whether it was Brophy or Blockberger or Foxen or whoever it was. And when I saw them getting flat, I'd say, out of the weight room, we're going to go do multi-throws for a couple of days. And multi-throws were overhead back, underhead forward, double leg hop and push type thing, and whatever.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay.
You can get it done. You can get it done.
Do you have any special cues that you would use as they transition from event to event?
The one thing we always did after the last attempt in an event, let's say the last attempt in the high jump for the females in the heptathlon, and then now they're going to the shot, whether it was a good attempt or not, a make or a miss or whatever, we never discussed it. It was totally put out of the deal. All right, we would discuss it later on. So it was just a punch in and punch out. I always had a thought. Paul Tarek was a great decathlete. He made the Olympic team in 2004, scored an 83.12 or 83 something or other. And he was ADD personified. And I really thought, I never saw a guy so hyper as, I'm hyper, but Paul Tarek make me look like nothing. So anyway, he's up at Washington. This is a good story. And this is how you have to punch in and punch out in multi-events. He's up at Washington. He's not married yet, just out of college. Takes his first throw in the shot put indoors up there. You know how the big crowds are up at that place. And he takes his first throw. It's a pretty good throw. And a couple minutes later, they're calling his name for a second throw. Tarek up in the shot put. And I'm looking around, people around. I said, where the heck's Tarek? He's over hustling some girl. And in between throws, try to get a hot date for the night or something like that. I said, Tarek, they just called your name. He looked at her and says, watch this, honey. And he walks over to the shot, bam, 52 feet. Lifetime best. He came back and just winked at me. So it's a punch in the story is this, not that he's chasing, trying to get a date. Punch in and punch out. You have to be able to turn it on and turn it off. Here's one of the deals with the decathlon, heptathlon. You can never, in between day one and day two, totally go into rest. You have to keep the pilot light on so that you're just on the edge. Don't let it go completely. Just be on the edge. Don't let yourself down completely. And then when you wake up the next morning for day two, you can fire that burner up. You can fire the pilot light up, and then you're ready for day two. You're ready for day two. The thing I think, it's 6:25, so I can stay on forever, but I don't know if you have a deadline time. But here's one thing that's really important. You have to keep challenging the athletes. I don't care whether they're individual events or multi-events. You have to challenge those athletes. They love that. Brianne Tyson scored 68.03 or 4 at Gutsis in 2015. In May. We go to Beijing. She's favored to win. She absolutely stinks to join up on day one. She was terrible. And she knew it. And she was down and in tears. The next morning, we wake up at 5. She wakes up at 5 a.m. I meet her outside at the hotel because we always do a 5 a.m. warm up before we go over on the bus and do our final warm up at the track. And she's in tears. And I said, "Hey, do you want to win next year in Rio?" She goes, "You know I want to win next year in Rio, coach." I said, "Well, you stunk to join up yesterday. If you..."
Okay, you froze again now, so let's get you back. Hopefully. We'll never know what happened. Harry, can you hear us at all? Oh no. Harry? Well, this might have ended the call here. So maybe Bree got she was being talked about here. So let's see if he comes right back on and then we can hear the ending of the story there. But I think it's so interesting as we listen to all the different coaches as they're talking through. And again, so much of it is the same and yet different. The rest do less. Harry, are you on again? I see your name. Harry? Well, Mac, while you snuck in on us here. We've got Mac Wilkins, who knows a little bit about throwing and weights, I think. I know you were at Oregon. I don't know about the same time as them, but did you have any additional information on the weights?
No, I'd like to hear what Harry had to say, the conclusion of the exciting story about
I know.
Brianna and her tears before the start of day two.
There you
Hey,
go.
Matt, what is happening?
Hey,
Harry, you got
Harry.
I think Bree knew you were talking about her and she zapped you there, but we lost you after you said she stunk up the place day one.
Oh, she did. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Because the screen went blank or something. But she sunk it up, and I said, "Hey, you were terrible on day one. Do you want to win next year?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Well, you better come out and really compete today, or they're going to..."
Oh no.
Oh, Harry, you're such a tease.
I know. What is this? Harry, come on. This might be
So it was
round
really
two.
satisfying to her. So I think.
Oh wait, Harry, are you back?
Can
Harry,
you,
can you hear us?
I can hear you guys. Yeah.
Okay. You cut out again with what Bree said.
Bree said, but she went and got 3 PRs in the 3 events the second day: long jump, javelin, and 800 meters, and ended up with the silver medal. So you have to challenge the athletes. Matt can
Okay.
tell you the same thing. You have to the athletes have to challenge themselves, and the coach and athlete together have to challenge each other.
Very true. Very true. Well, in closing, before we lose you totally, do you have any advice, recommendation for those of us that do want to continue or start coaching with the combined events? A
You
shortcut,
know
if
what?
you will.
Every mentor that I had back in the 60s and 70s, every one of those guys had a specialty, but every one of them could coach every single event. So my recommendation is that if you're a high jump coach or a distance coach or a throws coach or whatever, learn every single event in the sport because there's interrelationships there. And as soon as I saw as a coach, whatever athlete starting to say, "Hey, the high jump or the javelin plant with your left foot is the same as the high jump
Yep.
plant." I said, "Really? Is it? Is it? You really think so?" Soon as they started to get that connection, it was a home run. It was a home. And if you look, there's an awful lot of good high jump javelin throwers that throw 240, 250, and they high jump 7 feet. I remember that in college when we were at San Francisco. So it started me thinking about that. But it's the same plant. So there's interrelationships. Learn all the events. Back in the old days, and we're dating ourselves, right, Mac? You had to know all the events. You had to know all the events. It's important.
Harry,
Definitely.
that's because you were the only coach out there.
What's that?
I said that's because you were the only coach out there. You didn't have a staff. You were the
Hey,
staff.
Andy, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm having a ball.
Good. It was a fun weekend in Houston a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, for Tom's statue unveiling, that was a nice moment.
That was tremendous. Yeah, you guys are doing great. Houston's doing great.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, Harry, thank you so
Hey,
much.
Sue. Sue,
Yeah.
I want to chime in real quick on
Oh,
something
okay.
Harry said earlier about the mental makeup of the athlete. And I think one thing that really I stress a lot is that every multi-talented athlete is not a multi. I think it's really important to identify the mental makeup of your athlete to even see if they have that makeup, that toughness, the ability to compartmentalize, moving from event to event.
It's
Very true.
Lynn, you're hitting it right on the nose. Exactly. Exactly. There's a lot of kids that can do a number of events, but they don't like the pain. They don't like the trauma. They don't like coming back from a bad event that they just had or something like that. The mental set is the critical aspect. It's the critical aspect. You get to the Olympic Games, you get to the state meet in high school, you get to the conference championships. The 8 people that line up for the 100 meters, probably in the final, every one of them could win. It's who's mentally set for that particular competition. And also, like you said, in the multi events, they got to want it. They got to want a challenge type thing. I developed a reputation, I think, early on. It was a wrong reputation. People said, Harry doesn't like college track. And that was nonsense. I didn't dislike college track. I disliked the NCAA because I didn't think they knew what they were doing. And secondly, it wasn't a big enough of a challenge. Yeah, to be the NCAA champion is big. I wanted something that would push me even more. I said, hey, can you develop an Olympic champion? Well, there's no higher step than that. So that's what, and it got tagged that I didn't like college track. College track is fine. The NCAA kept their nose out of it. It'd be even better. But you're right, Lynn. You're right.
Yeah. No, that's definitely because it's not always the most talented physical athlete that makes the best combined event if they don't have that mental preparation or the mental outlook.
Let me give you this last story on that, on Lynn and what you just said. Ashton is going to make the Olympic team. He's doing great in 2012. And once he made his first bar at 15 feet, it was over. So now he's jumping at 17.4, lifetime best. And they jumped the opposite way that year because it was a rainy day and the wind was blowing. So at 17.4, and this is a good tag in, Lynn, to what you just said. At 17.4 on his third attempt, he missed the first two. He came over and I said, you need to go up a pole so it's stiffer. And I said, move the standards back a little bit farther he was at 60 and I said, move him to 70. And as soon as he walked out onto the runway, the wind switched and into his face. And I just said, oh man, there's nothing I could do with that. I couldn't yell out to him. So he's standing there, he runs out, he smokes 17.4. He boomed it, and that set him on the way to the world record. We're debriefing the meet a couple days later, and I said, Ashton, in the pole vault, that wind switched on you. And he said, Coach, I knew that, and I will be damned if I let that beat me. There was the mentality you need. Yeah. There was the mentality you need. There you go.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, thanks again, and thank you for everybody's contributions. I think, again, I personally love the multis and heading that way on Friday to coach my little high jump guys that are part of it. But it's a beast amongst itself, and so you've definitely got to, like you say, learn all the events, and that's so important with it. So, Harry, thank you so much. Everybody else,
enjoy it.
Thank you. And
good to see everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Harry.
Jen,
Hey, Harry, come stop by
is our
UCSB
next one.
sometime.
June 4th will be our next one. So just keep an eye on my Facebook. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck, everybody.